The year was 1964. Inside Ford's engineering departments, frustration was boiling over. Ferrari was winning, again, on road courses, on endurance tracks. In the minds of racing fans around the world, Ford had money, Ford had factories, Ford had thousands of engineers, but Ferrari had prestige, and that stung. Henry Ford II took it personally. This wasn't just about racing anymore. This was about pride, about proving that American engineering could compete with European sophistication, about showing the world that Detroit wasn't just building grocery getters and family sedans. Ford wanted respect, and they were willing to spend whatever it took to get it. What most people know is that Ford eventually beat Ferrari at Le Mans, but what almost nobody knows is that hidden behind that victory was one of the most outrageous engines Detroit ever created. An engine so powerful, so controversial, and so terrifying to the competition that it was effectively banned before it ever got the chance to prove what it could really do. This is the shocking story of Ford's 427 SOHC, the Cammer, the engine NASCAR feared, the engine racers worshipped, and the engine that silenced Ferrari before the battle even began. To understand why the 427 SOHC existed, you have to understand the war Ford was fighting in the mid-1960s. America's manufacturers were obsessed with racing. Win on Sunday, sell on Monday. That wasn't just a slogan, it was business. Millions of dollars were riding on victories at Daytona, Talladega, Sebring, and Le Mans. Dealerships across America plastered racing victories on their windows. Advertisements featured checkered flags and trophy presentations. Customers walked in, asking for the same car they saw winning on television. Racing sold cars, and cars meant profit. Ford's existing weapon was the FE Series 427 V8. It was already a monster. With a 4.23-inch bore and a 3.78-inch stroke, displacement came to 427 cubic inches, or 7.0 liters. In racing trim, it produced well over 500 horsepower. Torque figures were equally impressive. The engine had a reputation for reliability, for toughness, for being able to survive brutal punishment lap after lap. But there was a problem. Actually, several problems. The engine was powerful, but it struggled to compete against Chrysler's new Hemi. The Hemi's hemispherical combustion chambers flowed incredible amounts of air. At high RPM, the Chrysler engine could simply breathe better. And in racing, breathing is horsepower. Chrysler was winning races, taking championships, embarrassing Ford on tracks where they should have dominated. Ford engineers needed an answer, fast. They couldn't afford another season watching Chrysler celebrate in victory lane. What they came up with sounded almost insane. Instead of designing an entirely new engine from scratch, they would transform the existing 427 FE into something radically different, something nobody expected, something that would change American performance forever. The result became known as the 427 SOHC, single overhead cam, 4 words that would send shockwaves through American motorsports. The conversion was unlike anything Detroit had ever attempted. Traditional American V8s used camshafts buried deep inside the block. Push rods transferred motion upward to rocker arms. Valves opened and closed. The system worked. It was proven. It was familiar. But it had limitations. The Cammer moved the camshafts into massive aluminum cylinder heads. Each head carried a single overhead cam driven by a timing chain more than 6 feet long. The chain itself became legendary. Engineers joked it looked more appropriate for industrial machinery than a race engine. It snaked up from the crankshaft, around tensioners and guides, all the way to the camshafts sitting high above the combustion chambers. Yet it worked, and the results were astonishing. The new heads dramatically improved airflow. Massive valves allowed the engine to inhale and exhale far more efficiently than the standard FE. Intake and exhaust ports were reshaped and enlarged. Valve angles were optimized. Combustion chamber design was completely rethought. Compression ratios ranged from around 12.01 to over 13.51 depending on racing configuration. The engine could safely spin beyond 7,000 revolutions per minute. Some race teams pushed even higher. That may not sound impressive today, But in 1965, for a giant 427 cubic inch American V8, it was almost unbelievable. Most big blocks of that era struggled past 6,000 revolutions per minute. Valve springs couldn't keep up, push rods would flex, connecting rods would bend, carnage was common. But the camera's overhead cam design eliminated many of those problems. Valvetrain mass was reduced, response improved, power climbed, dyno numbers began circulating. Officially, Ford claimed around 616 horsepower. Unofficially, many insiders believed race versions were making closer to 650 horsepower. Some experimental setups reportedly pushed beyond 700. At a time when most production performance cars barely exceeded 300 horsepower, the Camry wasn't just powerful, it was terrifying. Word spread quickly through the racing community. Mechanics whispered about the dyno sheets. Drivers talked about the acceleration. Team owners started making phone calls to Dearborn. Everyone wanted one. But there was a problem. The moment NASCAR officials saw the engine, alarms started ringing. From a technical standpoint, Ford argued the engine was simply a modified FE. The block was largely unchanged. Bore spacing remained identical. Displacement remained 427 cubic inches. Many internal components were shared with standard production engines. Crankshafts, connecting rods, pistons, much of it interchanged. Ford executives insisted this was evolution, not revolution. But NASCAR saw something entirely different. This wasn't a modified stock engine. This was a purpose-built racing weapon, and that distinction mattered enormously. NASCAR's homologation rules required manufacturers to build a certain number of engines for public sale. The exact number varied, but the principle remained consistent. If you wanted to race it, regular customers had to be able to buy it. Ford had no intention of mass-producing thousands of SOHC engines. The cost would have been astronomical. Installation in production vehicles would have required significant engineering modifications. Warranty claims would have been nightmarish. The company wanted the Camry for racing. Pure and simple. The dispute quickly escalated. Ford pushed. NASCAR resisted. Meetings turned heated. Engineers argued technical specifications. Executives complained about unfair treatment. Lawyers got involved. Teams waited nervously, wondering if their new superweapon would ever turn a wheel in competition. And then the hammer fell. NASCAR banned it. Officially, NASCAR declared the 427 SOHC was not a production engine. It didn't meet homologation requirements. It represented an unfair competitive advantage. The decision was final. Unofficially, many racers believed NASCAR was terrified of what the engine might do to the competition, because early testing suggested it could absolutely dominate. Private test sessions had shown lap times that left observers speechless, acceleration numbers that seemed impossible, top speeds that made everything else look slow. One Ford insider reportedly joked that NASCAR didn't ban the engine because it was illegal. They banned it because everyone else would have needed binoculars to see second place. You can probably guess how Ford reacted. They were furious, absolutely livid. Years of engineering effort suddenly had nowhere to go. Millions of dollars invested in development, testing, and tooling, all seemingly wasted. Press releases were drafted and scrapped. Marketing campaigns were canceled. Race teams were left scrambling for alternatives. The frustration inside Ford was palpable. But then someone had an idea. If NASCAR wouldn't let the Camry race, why not take it somewhere else? And that's exactly what happened. The engine found a new home in drag racing, and that's where the legend truly began. The quarter mile became the Camry's kingdom. The engine's incredible airflow and high RPM capability were perfect for drag strips. Unlike oval track racing, drag racing didn't have the same restrictive homologation requirements. If you could build it, you could race it. Performance mattered more than politics. Soon, racers across America were stuffing SOHC engines into Mustangs, Fairlanes, Comets, and purpose-built dragsters. Installation wasn't simple. Those massive cylinder heads created hood clearance nightmares. Engine bays had to be modified. Exhaust systems required custom fabrication, but dedicated racers made it work. Performance was explosive. Some early cars ran the quarter mile in the low 10-second range. Others dipped into the 9s. Trap speeds regularly exceeded 140 miles per hour. The quickest examples approached 150. And remember, this was the mid-1960s. Those numbers were outrageous. Most street cars struggled to break into the 15-second range. Factory muscle cars ran mid to high 13s if you were lucky. Professional drag racing was just beginning to explore the 10-second barrier. And here came Ford with an engine that made it look easy. At tracks across America, competitors watched Ford-powered machines launch down the strip with brutal violence. The sound alone became unforgettable. Unlike the deeper rumble of conventional big blocks, the camera produced a sharper mechanical scream. Those overhead cams changed everything. The valvette trains sang at high RPM. A distinctive metallic chorus accompanied the exhaust roar. Spectators could hear the difference. Racers could feel the difference. And rivals quickly learned to fear the difference. Winning became routine for well-prepared camera-powered cars. Track records fell. Championships were won. Magazine covers featured Ford's overhead cam monster. But even monsters have weaknesses. The camera's complexity created challenges. That massive timing chain could stretch under extreme conditions. Tolerances had to be monitored constantly. Valve train components experienced enormous stress at sustained high RPM. Maintenance costs skyrocketed. Race teams spent countless hours ensuring timing remained precise. Chain tension required constant adjustment. Guide wear had to be monitored. One veteran mechanic reportedly described tuning a camera as trying to balance a chainsaw on a bowling ball. Difficult, delicate, and occasionally dangerous. But the performance made every headache worthwhile. Teams that mastered the engine's quirks dominated their competition. And then the international racing scene took notice. At the same time, Ford was developing the GT40 program to attack Ferrari at Le Mans. Engineers were evaluating every possible power plant. The SOHC was considered, seriously considered. Test installations were performed. Dyno testing was conducted. Performance projections looked incredible. But ultimately, reliability concerns won out. The standard pushrod 427 side oiler became Ford's primary endurance racing weapon. And it was a brilliant choice. Its famous side oiler lubrication system fed oil directly to the crankshaft first. Main bearings stayed alive. Oil starvation became far less likely. Reliability improved dramatically. For a 24-hour race, dependability mattered as much as horsepower. At the 1966 24 Hours of Le Mans, Ford achieved one of the greatest victories in racing history. The GT40 finished first, second, and third. A clean sweep. Ferrari's dominance was shattered. Enzo Ferrari watched from Italy as American V8s humiliated his racing legacy. Average speeds exceeded 130 miles per hour. The cars covered over 3,000 miles, and Ford finally achieved revenge. The victory made headlines worldwide. Henry Ford II stood in victory lane, finally vindicated. All the money, all the effort, all the frustration, finally rewarded. But here's the fascinating part. Many insiders believed the SOHC represented an even greater performance ceiling. Had regulations been different, had development continued, had NASCAR embraced the engine instead of banning it, the Camry might have become the most dominant American racing engine ever built. That's not exaggeration. Consider the numbers. The standard 427 side oiler typically produced around 425 horsepower in street form and roughly 500 plus in race trim. The SOHC regularly exceeded 600. Torque figures approached 500 pound-feet, yet it could rev hundreds of RPM higher than competing big blocks. It combined brute force with breathing efficiency, a rare combination, and one competitor struggled to match. Engineers who worked on the program later admitted they had barely scratched the surface. Development had been rushed. Testing was incomplete. The engine had far more potential waiting to be unlocked. What they discovered next changed everything, because the ban itself accidentally created the engine's mythology. Think about it. What happens when people are told they can't have something? They want it even more. The Camry became forbidden fruit. Every racing magazine wanted to test one. Every hot rodder wanted to own one. Every Ford enthusiast wanted to hear one. And because relatively few were built, scarcity only increased the legend. Production estimates vary, but historians generally believe only a few thousand complete SOHC engines were produced. Some sources suggest the number was closer to 1,000. Others claim slightly more. Exact records are difficult to verify. Compared to mainstream V8 production numbers, that was practically nothing. Ford built hundreds of thousands of standard FE engines, but only a fraction received the overhead cam treatment. Even when new, the engine wasn't cheap. A complete SOHC package costs significantly more than conventional FE engines. We're talking thousands of dollars extra in 1960s money. That was serious investment. Race teams willingly paid the premium because winning pays better than saving money. Trophies earn sponsorships, championships sell parts, and bragging rights are priceless. As the years passed, the automotive world changed. The muscle car era peaked, then began to collapse. Insurance rates exploded. High-performance vehicles became expensive to own. Young drivers faced astronomical premiums. Many couldn't afford to insure the cars they wanted to buy. The Clean Air Act and new emissions regulations tightened around the industry. Compression ratios fell. Horsepower numbers dropped. Engines that once made 400 horsepower were suddenly rated at 250. Fuel crises shifted consumer priorities. Gas lines stretched around city blocks. Efficiency mattered more than quarter-mile times, and giant racing V8s slowly disappeared from dealer showrooms. Ford ended regular camera production. The tooling was mothballed. Engineers moved to other projects. The golden era was over, or so it seemed, because legends don't die, they evolve. By the 1980s and 1990s, collectors had begun hunting original SOHC engines. Barn finds became treasure hunts. Swap meets attracted serious buyers with serious money. Prices climbed steadily, then dramatically, then unbelievably. Today, authentic Ford 427 SOHC engines can sell for tens of thousands of dollars. Rare racing examples with documented history can command far more. Six-figure price tags aren't uncommon for the right engine. At auctions, complete period-correct camera-powered vehicles routinely attract enormous attention. Bidding wars erupt. Collectors compete fiercely, not because they're the fastest, not because they're the rarest, but because they represent something bigger. They represent a moment when engineers were allowed to dream, a moment when horsepower mattered more than spreadsheets, a moment when Ford looked at the rulebook, looked at the competition, and decided to build something outrageous, something that pushed boundaries, something that made people nervous. And perhaps that's why the story remains so compelling. The 427 SOHC wasn't merely an engine. It was a statement, a declaration that Ford could build a world-class racing power plant capable of competing with anyone, even Ferrari, even Chrysler, even the best in the world. And despite being banned from NASCAR competition, the engine achieved something far more powerful. It became immortal. Decades later, enthusiasts still speak about it with reverence. Magazine articles continue to feature it. YouTube videos dissect its engineering. Forums debate its specifications endlessly. Today, enthusiasts still debate what might have happened if NASCAR had approved it. Would it have dominated Daytona? Would it have rewritten record books? Would rival manufacturers have been forced into an all-out engineering arms race? Would Chrysler have responded with something even more extreme? Would we have witnessed a horsepower war unlike anything before or since? We'll never know. But that's part of the magic. The mystery remains, the possibilities remain, and the legend grows with every passing year. Stories get embellished, performance numbers get inflated, the mythology expands beyond the facts. But underneath all that, the truth remains impressive enough on its own. In the end, the shocking truth behind Ford's banned 427 SOHC isn't just that it was powerful. It's that it was too powerful for the era that created it, too advanced for the rulebooks, too threatening to the established order, too controversial for sanctioning bodies to accept. With over 600 horsepower, overhead cam technology, race-winning potential, and a reputation that terrified competitors, the Camry became one of the most legendary engines America ever produced. It didn't need a championship to prove its greatness. The ban itself became proof of what everyone feared it could do. If you enjoyed this story, let me know in the comments what legendary engine you'd like to see next. And make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next deep dive into the machines, rivalries, and engineering masterpieces that changed automotive history forever.